Most people, regardless of their background, will agree that a picture's worth 1,000 words. That's one reason conditional formatting is powerful as far as individual data values go. But when it comes to the big picture, people can usually also agree that a chart represents that data well. It's not that we can't draw conclusions from data by reading the individual values, it's just a lot easier to get an overview of trends and relationships in the data with a chart. We've been able to do charting in Excel since the beginning of spreadsheet time, really, but I have a new twist for you. I've moved back to my expense summary worksheet. And again, we have basically 12 months of data for 8 or so different categories. If I asked you to start analyzing this data and giving me some feedback on it in the next 10 seconds, could you do it? Well, I'm not going to make you wait the 10 seconds. What I know is you probably could start. Now, it depends on how you read data. You might start going down the column for January and just make a calculation like, well, obviously our wages are by far our largest expense, followed by leases, and it looks like maybe our lawn care in this particular month was the lowest. Other people might start looking across the data and say, well, yeah, I can very quickly see that overall, for my overall lease expenses for all of my locations, it looked like they were fairly stable, and then they made a jump between May of '09 and June '09, and then they were stable for the rest of the year. So these things are things that we can do without any help from charts. The point is that even with this relatively small amount of data, it's already difficult to analyze it quickly. Now, imagine that this was a larger budget, with hundreds of expenses and categories over maybe 5 years or something like that. See how complicated it can get? Well, we could do a chart, but again, charts aren't new, and there is a limitation to charts. In other words, I have to decide if I wanted a chart for the entire one, or if I was going to break it down and do one for each month, or one for each category, or different variations. I could end up with a lot of charts. I want to show you the new tool. This new tool is really cool. And in order to do it, I'm going to start by simply selecting my data. Now I want to include everything. So that starts from January '09 from my lease all the way down through December of '09 for my wages. I did not include my totals. Now I'm going to insert something that's new, and this new thing is called a sparkline. I'm going to go ahead and move up to my Insert tab. Hopefully that's intuitive because I want to insert something onto my worksheet. And I get to see that there's an entire new group called Sparklines. And basically in here there are 3 different categories or options: a line, a column, or win-loss. I'm going to choose column. A little box is going to come up and it's going to say, where do you want me to put your results, your location? Well, I'm going to scroll just a little bit over to the right, and I'm going to place these in the cells directly after the totals. So this is going to be '02 and go down through '09. That's all I have to do. I'm going to click OK, and there's my sparkline. Now, you may be saying, I'm not sure what I'm seeing. Let me scroll over, and let me also zoom in just a little bit to make this a little bit easier to see. Something like that. Sparklines are actually in-cell charts for a range of data. They're quick, they're easy, they're specific for a series. In this case, we have one for each budget item. And it allows us to quickly identify patterns or trends in our data. As you saw, creating them is really just a matter of a couple of clicks, maybe a click and drag depending on how much data you have. But let's also look at some of the different ways that we can modify these, because right now they're okay, but I'm also having a little bit of trouble seeing exactly what I'm supposed to be getting from this. So let me just deselect real quick and show you that the one for our lease isn't very interesting. It started off low and then it went high. Some of our other expenses that varied throughout the year are a little more interesting. And if we had things that were stable all the way across, it just looks like a solid bar. Well, what we need to recognize is that when we create a sparkline, sparklines, of course, when they are selected, and because we're working in 2010, we actually get to see something called a contextual tab for the sparkline. Sparklines have a design tab. From here, we can first of all edit the data. If I wanted to go and draw things from somewhere else, I could go ahead and click on that, kind of like recalculating a chart or redefining the data used in a chart. But something that could be useful is to change it from a column sparkline to a line, or in other words, a column chart to a line chart. Now this actually might make it easier to see the trends in the data because I can see the line going up and down. So these are a couple of options, and if we had appropriate data, we could also do a win-loss type. I'm going to go ahead and leave this as a column for now. The next set that we have is a group called Show. What would we like to see? High points, low points, negative points, first points, last points, and if you had the line, you could also choose markers. Well, before I change this, I'm actually going to configure my spreadsheet just a little bit because this is a very narrow column. I'm simply going to change the width by dragging it, and now we can see the individual columns a little bit better. Now you will notice that if I check things like high point, and I'll kind of turn it on and off so you can see it, and low point, you can see that things are changing colors. So it's making it easier for me to identify the most expensive and the least expensive months that we had for each expense category. Because it wouldn't be anything since 2007 if we didn't have styles, we can apply styles to these. Again, it doesn't really matter which one you choose. I'm just going to click one to show you that I can change it. And what may be more important is that I can even work with the individual colors. Now we have the Sparkline color. Of course, this is based on themes and everything else like they usually are since Office 2007, but I also can choose marker colors. Now the thing I like about this is how I can easily differentiate between them. So I could choose it for negatives, highs, and lows, and I want these to all stand out. So I'm going to make my high point be kind of this bright blue color, and then I'm going to come back to marker color, and I'm going to choose my low point, and of course a low point, since we're talking about money, would be red. Well, actually, that should probably be the opposite because we're talking about expenses. So a low expense would probably be better than a high expense. But that's just formatting. So now let me click off of this, and let me ask you if you can see things a little bit more clearly now. We definitely have some bright colors. Would I recommend these color choices for your particular application? Probably not, but they make it a little bit more fun and a little bit more visual. When we have things that don't change over time, the markers stay exactly the same. In other words, for this particular line, I can see that everything is the same value. So they're all the high and the low, and of course it formats based on the low point. When I look at others, then of course this one only has two values. So the highs are one color and the lows are another color. And with other things in between, we get variation. Let me go ahead and just change this back to a line just so you can see how that might look. There we go. Now we get to see the marker points and the colors that we were talking about as well. So whether you use line or columns, spark lines are actually a brand new feature in Excel 2010. What they actually do is take a fairly common but powerful Excel analysis tool, charts, and gives us a new way to use them by providing small in-cell charts that can quickly and compactly summarize or show us trends in our data. Because they're also embedded right into the worksheet, they're easy to work with, and they don't clutter up or complicate the worksheets like charts, especially the way multiple charts have a tendency to do. And in doing all of this, it really provides us just a great visual tool for better, quicker, easier understanding of our data. I love the way that these work, and this is probably one of the most touted new features by a lot of users of Excel for 2010. You should take a look at spark lines and see if you can ever use them in order to enhance your data as well.